The advertisement opens in a dull black and white room with an anonymous disheveled male, coughs, Taylor, blankly staring at a computer. Do you ever find life update emails unbearably boring? The anonymous male's head leans back and he starts to snore. Do you struggle to find the motivation to read thousands of words when you know you could just close the computer and Alex wouldn't be the wiser? Well, now you don't have to. The scene bursts into full color and you see a well-groomed, anonymous female laughing as she reads the latest life update email. With the all-new Alex is stalking you-o-matic, lacking motivation is a thing of the past. Now that Alex can use your device's cameras to know exactly when and how far you read his life update emails, you don't have to worry if he's watching you. You see me, my head slowly turned to face you, my eyes wide with an unnaturally large smile plastered to my face. The scene snaps back to the beautiful young woman, joyfully reading the latest life update email. So make lacking a motivation a thing of the past, and order your Alex is stalking you-o-matic today. The voice speeds up by 3. Terms and conditions apply. Alex is stalking you-o-matic can be used for anxiety, fear, and extremes of death. Ask your doctor if Alex is stalking you-o-matic is right for you. So, what do you think? Should I go into the ad business or what? Well, the whole thing about me stalking you isn't totally unfounded. I actually did install an email tracking software that lets me know how many of you actually read these, and in all honesty, I was expecting the total to be a lot fewer than it was. Wait. A lot fewer than I expect. Blinks twice. Wait. I silently mouth that sentence again, and then mumble to myself. But if I expect fewer than I'm expecting, does that mean I expect more or less than I was originally expecting? I shake myself out of it. Anyway, so yeah, I'm tracking which one of you reads my email. It's not like it's really all that helpful to me to disclose to you this at this point in time, because if you read this far, you've already, been marked, so to speak. It's kind of like if I injected you with some unknown serum and then told you that 95% of patients who take this serum die. So yeah, you're welcome for that. But all the stalking aside, this live email should be more interesting than most, which I get isn't saying too much, as it contains what I am deeming my ultra sketchy experience, aka the experience I recorded the day after I got very close to actually dying. So, that was certainly eventful, and if you don't read anything else in this email, you should read that, as it was pretty crazy and impacted me in a fairly significant way. But yeah, other than that, I do accomplish a few other fairly monumental things. So the Alex is stalking you-o-matic, whether it's there or not, will hopefully help you find the motivation to at least read this life update email in particular. All that said, let's begin. Spreads out his arms in a dramatic fashion. It was a dark and stormy mid-afternoon cloudless day. After finishing my last live update email, I discovered the artist called Built by Titan, who I've really come to love. I recommend you move your fingers in small increments, less than 20 times, in order to figure out who he is and listen to one of his songs. But I also recognize that for most of you, that's too much to ask. But yeah, that day happened to be on Father's Day, so Mom convinced me to buy her coffee. Oh yeah, right. As she argued if she was happy, then Dad would be happy. Which, though I 100% recognize that Mom had no selfless intentions in this regard, wasn't really a bad idea. What's the saying? Happy wife, happy life? Yeah, something like that. Anyway, I got Mom coffee for Father's Day. Yeah, even after I explain that, it still seems odd. And then spent the majority of the day at Neo's house just hanging out, doing dishes, eating chicken, and then playing video games till 1 a.m. The next day, I read more of my philosophy book for around 4.5 hours. And I only got through like 32 pages. Now, from this fact, you can draw one of 3 conclusions. 1, Alex is stupid, and that's why it takes him so long to read this philosophy book. 2, Alex is really bad at reading and is super slow. Or 3, this philosophy book is really dense. Now, since all of you know me, I would hope that 1 isn't a live option for you, but hey, who knows? Maybe someone out there just thinks I'm stupid. As for 2, I wouldn't say I'm exceptionally fast at reading, and perhaps I might be on the slow side, but I know I'm not that slow. Thus, 3 seems to be the logical conclusion. In which case, if you're dubious, I will just flat out assert it is the logical conclusion. Seriously, talk about a mind-intensive book to read. So I did that for a while until the Macy's came over, and then we just hung out and played some volleyball over at CSU, which was fairly fun. And that night, I took my new fancy music and went on a rollerblade that night, which was very nice. The following day, I read more of my philosophy book, went to work, read more of my philosophy book until I played some D&D with Mom and Grace, and then went to Ratchet Christie, where we talked about ethics, which was very good. The next day, I woke up at like 12 a.m., not p.m., aka I majorly slept in. I then went to work, during which I finally finished history of Middle Eastern philosophy. Gosh, that took ages. Also, while I have a lot memorized, I'm trying to recite some of it at hiking club, and I found out that I still have a lot of gaps that I need to fill. I then went to youth group and worked on memorized history philosophy, and then that night, I did another night blade. The following morning, I had a long Discord debate with Ratchet Christie people. I also went to work and then subsequently talked to Jordan for a few hours. I then played soccer and did pretty well, earning myself the name Gladiator, so you know, if any of you want to address me at this point by Gladiator, I'll accept that. And then I oiled up and fixed my blades. The next day, aka Friday, I read more of my Flossie book and went to hiking club, and here's a pic of the road up. I had a good conversation, and I got to talk to this guy named Duncan, who's an Orthodox Christian, which is cool. We've gotten to know each other fairly well since then. And yeah, it was a super short hike, just 6 miles. We hiked up this lake, of which this is a picture. And then we got back and joined in for a bonfire night at Molly's, which was pretty good in the end. Because Cable and I had a great conversation about miracles and stuff. Here's a picture of Cable standing at the fire. And here's a picture of the fire, because I thought it looked cool. The next day I found out my grandpa got very close to dying. I don't know exactly what was wrong, but whatever it was bad. At the moment, he's back in the hospital, but he's still looking quite a bit better, so I think he'll turn out all right. Nevertheless, if any of you would be game, a quiet prayer addressed to heaven on his behalf would be quite awesome. Other than finding that out, I also worked on memorizing the Arabic history of philosophy, as well as getting my hair cut, which I must say is pretty low on my favorite experiences list. I mean, here you are, confined to a chair, practically forced by all social norms to have a meaningless conversation with some stranger, as their skin makes contact with yours and they stare intently at your head. But anyway, after that, I got some shopping done, read some of my philosophy book, did a D&D session with Mom and Grace. The following day, I read my philosophy book, which brought about a change in my convictions that I'm certain most of you will be glad to hear. I now consider myself agnostic in regards to evolution. Good thing I said that second part right. But yeah, after reading about it, I would now consider myself to hold a scientific anti-realism of sorts. Not quite sure as to what sort. My smart Thomas friends are ontological anti-realists and call themselves structural realists. But the name of the position that the book presented and that I was indeed inclined toward is called pragmatic scientific anti-realism. AKA, science is pragmatic but not necessarily correct in determining our ontology. But anyway, I'm a scientific anti-realist, which means the fact that a bunch of scientists agree about evolution happened no longer carries the weight it used to. Anyway, later that day, I went to church and read some more of my philosophy book, worked on memorized history of philosophy, went to Neo's, and then kept talking, and nobody exploded. It's a game called Keep Talking, No One Slows. And then we did some Smash Bros. And then we ate pizza, and I went on a walk, and talked, and played Halo, and ate ice cream, and then finished a Halo campaign at 1:30 a.m. Gosh, I keep staying up late with Neo. The next day, I slept until 1, which is unbelievably long. I then took Mom out for coffee, and we talked. I read more of my philosophy book of death, worked on the front yard. I think I was weeding. I talked with Michael briefly, installed an email tracking software that's aforementioned, and caught up on my second wind for reading the philosophy book, which I'm getting quite close to the end now. The next day I had work, read my book for a little while, and then I did something fairly stupid. See, believe it or not, reading a college philosophy textbook isn't fun per se. It's like running. You don't really enjoy the act of gasping for breath or causing your legs to ride in protest and, you start lighting everything on fire. Oh, and start lighting everything on fire. But you do it nonetheless, and you do it because it's good for you. In a similar way, reading a philosophy textbook is like running, but for your brain. Except this particular book is more like suicide runs. Seriously, I took like 40-something pages of notes, and literally 15 are just definitions. 15 pages of definitions. So there's a lot of jargon you have to get down as you read this thing, which I will let you know doesn't make it much easier. So anyway, I had read my philosophy book for a while, and my brain was like, extends a feeble hand, help me. So I decided to give my brain a break and go rollerblading. Well, you see, sometimes I desire to challenge myself, and sometimes I forget I'm a mortal human. So what happened was, I was originally like, I'll just blade around and come back a bit. But then I got to the a bit part, and I was like, I'll go a bit more. So then I went a bit more, and I was like, why don't I go to the edge of town? So I got to the edge of town, and I was like, well, why don't I go up Bingham Hill? And I got to the top of Bingham Hill, and I was like, ah! You see a streak on rollerblades whoosh by you screaming. Yeah, it turns out Bingham Hill is steep and tall. And for those of you that haven't taken college physics, steep plus tall equals mucho potential energy. So yeah, Bingham Hill is like, on average, a 7 or 8% grade hill, though parts are like 10% grade. And just in case you didn't know the grades of the incline, 8% is fairly sharp. Like, steep enough that as I was going up it, I literally couldn't blade it up. I just had to walk with the blades on, which, by the way, is agonizingly slow. Also fairly tiring. So I make it to the top, right? And I look down, and I'm like, maybe this isn't such a great idea. But I look back the other way, and I came up, and I'm like, going down that way is also not a great idea, as it was just as steep as the way I was going to go down if I went down the way I was kept going. So my thought process was, well, I got to get down sometime. So I decided to just go for it. Now, 2 complicating factors. 1, there is no bike lane. There is just a plain car-only road. So here I am going down on rollerblades, a car-only road. 2, the road is stupidly rough. Like, probably just as close as you can get to the roughness of a gravel road without having it actually be gravel. AKA, it was not rollerblade friendly. So I'm going down and a few things happen. First, I stopped being able to feel my feet because they are vibrating like crazy. Second, I realized that rollerblades aren't meant to travel down hills at 35 miles an hour. And if I hit a rock, I'm going to roll at least 20 feet and not mention lose all the skin I so dearly love and break all my bones. And third, I realized this is a stupid decision. I'm an idiot. The problem is, however, these sorts of realizations tend to only come when one is flying down a hill at unimaginable speeds. Frankly, praying to God to be merciful and not let you face the consequences of your stupid decisions. So yeah, that was a questionable decision at best, but thankfully God decided I still had things left to do with my life and permitted me to keep on living. But yeah, that was definitely the fastest I've ever gone down a hill on anything that is not a car, let alone rollerblades. And I hope I never have to go that fast again. But yeah, after that harrowing experience, I decided it was probably time to head back. So I took a picture of the Bellevue store and began the 7-mile journey back to Fort Collins. Here's a picture of that store. Oh, and while I'm doing pictures, I saw this sign on the way out, which I thought was pretty great. It says, "Any functioning adult, President 2020. All right, guys, this is my new official political stance. But yeah, the journey back was pretty exhausting. My ankles hurt. My rollerblade wheels were visibly worn, despite, me recently flipping them and angling them to one side. However, I did make it home, exhausted, but nevertheless alive. I think I did over 14 miles, but I don't know the exact amount. So after all that physical exercise, my brain was rejuvenated enough to make me go through one last push, and I finally finished my philosophy tome. Here's a picture of the last glorious page. Gosh, that was a great feeling. Do you know it took me a month and a half, almost to the day, to read that thing? Gosh, it was a lot of work, but it was worth it. I am now 203% smarter. So yeah, I did that, and it was pretty great. The following day, I got work done a little early, so I could hang out with Josiah, and we did that. But, would you believe it, my car broke down while I was hanging out with him. Again. So remember last time we had hung out, how my car kind of exploded, and I ended up getting it towed and all that? Well, we even joked about my car driving through Fort Collins, and then the exact same thing happened. Seriously, my car started misfiring and freaking out, not 2 blocks from where it broke down last time. So yeah, that was crazy. And we ended up just getting chips and drinks and stopping by Dairy Queen to get some ice cream before walking home. Again. So yeah, I blame Josiah. He's the real culprit. No, I actually think it's got to do something with my AC because I never turned it on and I've only turned it on with him. And both times after turning my AC on, the car was like, no. So I suspect it to be something to do with my engine overheating when the AC pulls that little coolant that the engine has and puts it into the cap. I think that theory is slightly confirmed by the fact that when I fixed up my car recently and discovered it was completely out of coolant, which might explain why my car can't handle the AC turning on. But I don't know. I need to learn more about cars, but that's my running theory. In the end, it was quite the coincidence that it happened with Josiah. Again, almost verbatim where it happened last time. However, after Mom took me and Josiah back to his house and dropped him off, I started my car back up, and it's been running fine ever since. So, yeah. Also, before I forget to put it in here, here's a bonus picture of Ben not knowing he's being photographed through a window. And that should totally be Ben's new profile pic because it's fantastic. Anyway, later that day, I took Grace to the Myers for youth group, and where we played a lot of volleyball and had a pretty good time. When we got home, I spent the rest of the night doing maintenance on my blades after my aforementioned journey of death. The following morning, I met Alan at Panera, and we talked for 4 hours and 30 minutes, and honestly, it was one of the best conversations I've had in a good while. And when I got back, I got to work. I went to work as usual, played soccer, which was good as always, and then packed up for the hike the next day. The following day, I woke up at 3 a.m., which is definitely way too early to wake up and should be outlawed always and ever. But I made it to the meeting place in time, and we drove up to Mount Ida. On the way up, we saw some pictures of elk, which I'll show you now through this wonderful technology called pictures. And there you are. All you animal lovers, fat, horny horses. Oh, and you know what? I'll also throw in a picture of a fat guinea pig for you. It's a marmot. Yes, I know it's called a marmot, but nevertheless, I deemed it a fat guinea pig. Anyway, when we got there, we intended to go, and so we started off. I don't know why I said it that way. That's a weird way to say it. Oh, and you see that guy in the corner of the picture? Yeah, that's Zeke. He hiked the entire 17-ish miles, with the majority of that being off trail, barefoot. Seriously, with very few exceptions. He did the whole thing without shoes. AK Kiwis, this American white boy is giving you a run for your money, so you better step up your game. But no, Zeke is great, and we got to have some good conversations. Well, really, our conversations consist of him asking me every philosophical, theoretical question he could think of, and me answering them all. Now, you may be thinking, Alex, there's no way you answered all his questions. I get you're smart, but you're not that smart. To which I reply, nope, I actually answered all of them, and I think he was satisfied with all the answers I gave. The thing is, though, you ask smarter questions the more you study, so he didn't, ask smart questions, so I get all the answers that I was like, that's easy. None of the questions I didn't know the answer to. So it's not that I know all the answers to all the questions, just I know all the answers to the easy ones. But yeah, I talked with Zeke and hiked up to the ridgeline, of which here's a picture of us at the ridgeline. And then we reached the summit. We chilled at the summit for a bit and then struck off down the trail to this lake. And so we hiked along the ridgeline until we came to this place here, which I have a picture. And then we all hiked down this lake, and then we hiked all the way back up, which was definitely exhausting. Here's a picture of me soaking my hot, tired, hairy feet in the cold water. But then, not like 15 minutes after we got there, Mr. and Mrs. Miller called us back up, so we hardly got to enjoy it. The rest of the trip was off trail, and after we climbed back up to the ridgeline, we went down this like marshy valley area where I took this picture. The person walking in the picture, by the way, is Chris. He's only a sophomore in high school, but he's managed to keep up with us pretty well. So yeah, after this point, I got tired enough to just go into mindless walk mode and didn't take any pictures after that. But it was a long hike from this point back to the cars, and I'm pretty sure Molly got us lost for a while, but we managed to make it back in one piece. So yeah, that hike was super tiring. Also, I had trash boots for most of it. So I was then persuaded to buy some good hiking boots, which cost me like $75. And though kind of pricey, I can definitely say it was worth it and probably saved my life. More on that later. But yeah, that day we hiked for literally 9 hours straight, though we did do some breaks. And then finally we got back to the car around 4. Oh, and I was also majorly sunburned on this trip, despite my best efforts to do otherwise. So that was fun. So yeah, made it to the cars, exhausted yet alive. After that, we drove to Estes Park and stopped in at Molly and Mrs. Miller's favorite Nepalese restaurant. We ordered food there, and it was ridiculously expensive. $20 for one meal, and it wasn't even that good. So yeah, after that, I made it home and cleaned the house because of reasons. And also, I got Esther's cover art for my novel in the mail. Here's a picture of it on my wall, which is very cool. Honestly, I was fairly disappointed with it at first glance. Like, it's really well done artwork and all, but not quite good for a cover. Honestly, I still feel that way. But as of late, it's growing on me. And, you know, I've come to love it because it's a cover art with personality. Especially after my bro touched up from Photoshop. Like, that now looks pretty good. So yeah, I got my cover art poster drawn for me, and that was very nice. The following day, I slept in a good full 12 hours, and then bought the aforementioned hiking boots. Then that evening, I went to the Myers for a 4th of July party, where we played a lot of volleyball, and because my arms were so sunburned, I just stayed in the front so I could hit with my palms. Then that night, I went to see the fireworks, and here's a blurry picture of that. And yeah, that was a pretty good day. The day after, I went to church, and then spent a good deal of cash on oil and coolant and other car fluids and stuff. I went to Neo's, where we played a good game of D&D, did Bible study, and then played Halo, and did dishes. The day after that, Monday, I guess, I seriously spent the entire day working on my car. Yeah, it turns out cars are fairly complicated. Who would have thunk? But yeah, after then doing that, I watched a movie with a fam, Robin Hood Men in Tights, which was Monty Python-esque, and then I managed to talk to Elkin a bit. That Tuesday, I had work, but I kept thinking about this D&D character I'm going to play and how to give him like the most tanky AC ever. And so I called Neo at work, and we built a character sheet for him over the phone while I ground jewelry pieces. When I got home, I fine-tuned the character sheet and went to Astro Christie, where we watched this video about how this guy found what they think is Mount Sinai. And they had some pretty convincing footage to show to prove it. We then did some good debating, which, since we had no whiteboard, we diagrammed our ideas on paper and created this masterpiece. I know, you missed trying to decipher these. And the following day, I had work and had to say goodbye to Nate, who was my boss up until now, and he was a pretty good boss, so that was sad. After that, I wrote a long email about why God exists to someone, and then worked some more on my D&D character. Oh, and then there was a youth group event at the Myers house, in which the most notable thing we did is make a human pyramid. One picture coming your way. Boop. So yeah, I've now done that. The following day was Nate's actual last day at work. Other than that, I spent my day reading stupidly long dry papers about analogical reasoning as it applies to God and debating Alan about it through Discord. I then played some soccer, which, along with the fam, watched along with the fam, and then packed for hiking. For this hike, I woke up at 5:30, which comparatively isn't that bad. Me and Cable talked the whole way up, and I kept up with his killer fast pace. We were going pretty darn fast in hiking terms. Here's a picture on the way up. Once we made it to the top, we took a bit, and it was pretty exhausting. Everyone just kind of chilled up there, and we took a nap for like an hour. Except me, because I can't take naps, especially on rocks. So here is the view from what the summit looked like. And here's everyone sleeping. And I know it doesn't look very comfortable. I see. I know, it looks very comfortable, doesn't it? So yeah, after that, we hiked down the saddle and up the peak, and there's some pictures of that. This is the view from the peak, and here's a picture of Cable, AJ, and Chris throwing rocks off the edge and watching them explode. And after that, we all started down the mountain. Now, here I have a bit of an interjection, as it's now come time to tell of my near-death experience. I wrote the next bit with Life of Demons in mind the day after it happened. That way I would be factually correct recollection of things. And I could be sure I didn't embellish the story too much. So here you go. My tale of my ultra sketchy experience. It all started off when I broke away from the rest of the group to follow AJ and Cable. Honestly, that was probably my first mistake, given that these are two college guys who love a good challenge, aka Risk, and who spent the last half an hour or so laughing gleefully as they pushed rocks off cliffs and watching them get dashed to pieces. Though I must say, it was pretty cool to watch. So yeah, perhaps against my better judgment, we trekked down the mountain we were on and across a valley to climb this other mountain. Now, from the other side, this mountain was a piece of cake. It was just a gradual grassy slope. But from this side, yeah, not so much. To give you a visual representation, it looked more like this. So yeah, after hiking across a bunch of shale, which is loose rock that's on the mountainside for those of you who don't know, we started climbing the mountain, and although it was physically taxing, it had yet to be sketchy. After reaching the ridge, we kind of walked along it until they come to this like sudden, and I do mean sudden, drop on one side, and a pretty near cliff on the other. And that's between us and our destination. Probably like a 75-degree angle or more. Here's a view from across it. So Cable and AJ decide it's best not to look a gift cliff in the mouth and start chucking rocks off the cliff face. Here, I drew a diagram so you can visualize it. The red one's Cable, the blue one is AJ, and the green one is me. Also, they didn't chuck that big a rock. I have some little stick figures. Boop. So yeah, just chucking rocks off. I actually have a video. I wonder if I can add that in. But after pushing quite a few rocks off, which I'm pretty sure is illegal, AJ tossed me one last rock, which was not even a super big one. Oh, tossed one last rock off, which is not even a super big one. And I hear this booming rumble thundering down the mountainside. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it, but AJ knocked a rock free that then, like, they estimated to be like the size of 2 semi-trucks, which then barreled down the cliffside. Honestly, I don't think they were exaggerating because it was super loud and it stirred up a ton of dust. Seriously, there was so much dust that the people that we split off from, so they saw it and they thought it was a cloud. So yeah, I'm definitely sure that was illegal, but at least it was illegal to a place where it couldn't hurt anyone. So yeah, every dust cloud has a silver lining, I guess. But just so you know, as soon as we realized it was probably illegal, which was before this whole endeavor, we stopped chucking rocks. Or I stopped chucking rocks. So I'm only guilty of watching others push rocks off cliff sides. So that makes it 1% better. Anyway, after that, Cable and AJ were like, time to go. And this is where the sketchiness begins. We tried to go down from where we were this quick way, but it was super steep. So we had to like slide on our butts to get where we're trying to go. Here's a rough picture of us, scaled. Pictured. But we couldn't make it, and we decided it wasn't worth the risk to jump. Also, you've got to keep in mind that we're doing all this with heavy backpacks on. That's what made this extra risky. So yeah, we decided we would have to take a different route, and we ended up shimmying along the side of the mountain, also a questionable choice, as if we fell, we basically die. And here's a picture / drawing of that. Boop. Man, that is sketchy. Why did we do that? So yeah, that was pretty darn crazy, but we made it down alive, relatively uninjured. After getting to a place where the hike was only challenging and not life-threatening, we ended up going back to the place we couldn't get past earlier, and then we decided we should go all the way down so we could skirt around all the life-threatening stuff and climb the other peak. Yet, as we went down, it starts to get pretty darn steep. So in part, because the rocks, would fly down the mountain as we climbed, and if anyone was below us, that would be super sketchy. And in part because I thought I saw an easier way to get down, I took one way down, and AJ and Caleb took another. So I'm making it down, and while all this is really questionable, there was this one point where I actually thought I was going to die. I took a picture after I barely made it through, and then basically drew a scale picture so you can see and get a feel for how close I was to either serious injury or death. I know you can't really see how steep it is from that picture, but I'll tell you, when you're climbing down it, you can tell. It was this point, somewhere near where I drew my stick man, I can't exactly remember where, I seriously almost fell. I know even before I attempted it, that was really sketchy. Like there was this ledge that only enough room for like 1 foot and nothing to hold on to except this flat bit of rock without a lip or anything. But even though it was risky, I could see it was the only possible way down, and that if I made it past this point, I'd be able to get the rest of the way down safely. So I committed. I put both my hands in the flat spot and pushed down as much pressure as I could to give me as much friction as I needed to keep from falling back. And then I stepped down to get my right foot on the ledge. And I got my right foot on the ledge and then suddenly found out I was stuck. I couldn't go back the way I came, as it was further to little clearing on my right than I thought. And my right foot was on the one on the ledge, so I couldn't jump. Now at this point, if I'm honest, I started to panic. So my memory gets a bit blurry, but I'll try and remember what I can. I remember frantically trying to find some place to grab, and there not being anything. I remember my backpack was pulling me away from the wall, and I had to use all my strength just to push down hard enough to keep the friction necessary to keep me from falling off. I think my arms were shaking. And then I remember feeling my fingers slipping. It's like the feeling you get when you're climbing a rock wall and you're trying to grip a hold, but you can feel your fingers slowly falling off. It's that feeling. You have it in your gut, like right before you fall. The rope lowers you to the ground, usually, except this time there is no rope. It was at that time that I experienced such a raw and desperate cry for God's help that I cannot even explain it. I've never felt like that before, and honestly, I cannot even describe it. But I know I'll never forget it. In a last-ditch attempt, I yanked my right hand out of my glove it was in, and as I was falling backward, grabbed a crack on the right side, jerked myself to the right, and jumped. I really don't remember how, but I know that I must have made it to literally clear my right, because I'm still here today to tell you about it. But seriously, it was the closest I've ever come to death. At the very least, quite a serious injury. And you know what? The whole experience has really given me a fresh perspective on life. First of all, there's a really good chance I might not be living right now, and that's arguably a miracle that I'm still alive. Second, it reminds me that every moment I live is on borrowed time, and that, I may not have nearly as much time as I think, given, how stupid it would be for me to waste my life. Oh, left on my clocks, I think. So how stupid would it be for me to waste the rest of my life that I do have? And third is something AJ said after we made it down. See, he very nearly died as well, actually. He slipped and was sliding off the edge, but Cable was able to stop him right before he went off. I didn't see it because I was too focused on not dying myself. But from what Cable and AJ tell me, it was really close. Anyway, what AJ said was something along the lines of, if you stop and think about it, God already saved us from an even bigger thing than he saved us from today, even if it doesn't really feel like it. And I know that for all of you, without having the near-death experiences, you're probably like, yeah, great line, because you hear stuff like that all the time. But you know what? It's understandable. And it's different when you actually experience it. So nevertheless, having me having looked death in the eyes, to say it dramatically, that line takes on a new degree of meaning for me. Anyway, all that said, I want to point out that I don't view this whole adventure as some harrowing tale that I can brag about. To me, it's more of a record of bad choices and not knowing my limits well enough. Granted, I made educated guesses as I was going down, but the fact that I was too stubborn to go back when it got sketchy, and I let peer pressure influence me, and that I had an unrealistic view of my abilities is not something I'm proud of. But hopefully, it's an experience I can learn from, and I'm super grateful God has given me the opportunity to do that, and that didn't just, all end right there. So yeah, that's the story of my ultra sketchy experience. All that being said, we did manage to make it down the mountain safely, and Cable set a pretty brisk pace for us as we hiked down. I'll tell you, by the end of it, my feet were definitely sore. Then there was a bonfire night at Molly's, and while that was good, it kind of degraded as the night went on, so I ended up leaving early. However, the next day, despite the fact that I was exhausted, I woke up and played soccer with some of Duncan's friends, which, though fairly fun, was a lot less fun made by the fact that my body was won't move. So yeah, I was pretty sore for the rest of the day. Once I got home, I spent some time cleaning the house and then wrote that ultra sketchy experience down. Then I spent I spent the afternoon catching up on emails and getting some stuff done in D&D with Mom and Grace before having dinner with Mom and some of Dad's friends, the people who edited Shadowstone, actually, and Esoteric Destiny for me. The next morning, I felt super sore, but I rollerbladed, because that's what it really was, over to CSU, where I did a 2-hour quiet time, and I prayed and reflected on some of the things I experienced, and that was revealed to me. After that, I baited red for Sela and mowed the lawn before heading over to Neo's, played some D&D, doing a Bible study, playing this weird Apples to Apples knockoff game, and then finishing the Halo 4 campaign and staying up till 2 a.m. doing so. The next day was work, and unfortunately, work has gotten a bit worse. Ever since Nate left, Dave, my big boss, has been having me learn a lot of extra stuff. So now it's a lot less mindless grinding metal and more actually using my brain. And under normal circumstances, that would be fine, but given I'm trying to memorize history and philosophy, it kind of puts a cramp on my style. But yeah, I did that, and finally finished catching up on my beta reading for Sela. I must say, she writes like a mad woman. Gosh, she is cranking out words. And while impressive, it's also a lot of work for me. I then debated Alan about divine simplicity on Discord, and also read a paper on annihilationism. The following morning, I drove over to the Myers and talked about free will and other stuff with their house for 4 hours. I mean, we had planned this ever since July, particularly Karina and I, but others jumped in too. Basically what happened is, as we were talking on the 4th of July, I said some things that sounded heretical and super questionable, and Karina was like, did you just say that? And I was like, well, yes, but... And then I tried to give an overview of why you can't just really give an overview. So I asked if she'd be willing to talk about it more in depth, and she said she was, so that was this talk. So basically, I just did that while Karina and Co. made food for 4 hours, and that was it. I hope they learned something, but who knows? They're feelers. When I got home, I worked on getting Esoteric Destiny finished up, now that I had the cover art and the final manuscript. I also took Dad out for tea with Ben, and spent the rest of the day until midnight getting copies of Esoteric Destiny ordered and getting it set up so you could buy it on Amazon. They just notified me I do have a few things to fix about the cover before it goes through. But yeah, pretty soon you can buy my book on Amazon. So if any of you care to read it, you can do that. Just ask for the manuscript because it's cheaper. Upon waking up the next day, I rushed to Walmart to get Mom's birthday present, as well as some essential hiking stuff, aka sunscreen. And then I went to my dentist appointment because everyone loves having random strangers shove their hands in your mouth. And then I went to work, sent the money for the cover art off to Esther, watched some of Hamilton with Mom, and then finally went and played soccer, which I've got to say was probably the worst game yet, as everyone was just goofing around. I then woke up at 3:45 and drove to the hiking meetup spot, where we then drove up to Trail Ridge Road. And for those of you who haven't been there, like all of you, Trail Ridge Road is pretty darn cool. Here's some pictures of it. And here's higher up on the road when I took some pictures of those way back. Pictures. We made it to the spot we were supposed to start hiking, and, well, started hiking. Here's a picture of the trail up. Eventually, we hit the road and... we hit a road and stopped there for a bit. Also, me and Cable were talking the whole way up, and we're doing it at a pretty solid pace, but there's this one guy, Alex. Yeah, I think I remember him from the start. It gets pretty confusing on us, honestly, both of us being Alexes, but I was going to name him Sage, aka Sage, but said weirdly, oh, I see. It gets pretty confusing, honestly, both of us being named Alex, so I was nicknamed Sage, or Sage, said weirdly, because apparently calling me the Sage is too much to give me to help distinguish us. But anyway, as far as nickname go, I'm not opposed to Sage. So yeah, here's a picture of us chilling on the road. Boop. So yeah, after this point, however, I decided to strike up a conversation with Alex, which, if you may suspect, meant I had to keep up with Alex. Now, on the road, that was doable. It was even it was even ground. I could quicken my pace a bit. But once the steep inclines hit and started, then I started struggling. At first, he hit the trail at near jog speed, and I thought, oh my gosh, he started off so fast, but he'll slow down after a bit. And I just kept waiting to wear him out, and he just didn't wear out. So after 15 minutes of practically jogging up a mountain, I had to ask him to just give me a break. He's the first person I don't think I could keep up with, and that I found so far that was super fast. Anyway, we reached the end of the trailhead way before everyone else, so we just sat around for 15 minutes or more. He decided to start climbing, even though there wasn't a trail, and I decided to wait for Molly and Cable, who had hiked up this before, so they'd know where to go. So when everyone finally caught up, I ended up joining Molly and this girl named Katie for the rest of the hike up to the lake, and we had a good conversation. Except Molly got frustrated. Actually, the whole trip she seemed frustrated with me. Even smacking me with a water bottle near the end of the hike. I'm fairly convinced I touched a nerve with her. But given my social intelligence levels, I have no clue what that nerve is and how to avoid touching it. So that's fun. But yeah, we made it to the lake, and here's some pictures. Boop. After chilling for a bit, we waited to see what the weather would hold. Molly, who really wanted to summit, decided to go for it, and Cable and Katie joined her. And while I was feeling fairly tired, I decided to go for it too. So, though it was a pretty steep climb, we made it to the top, and here's a picture of that. Boom. And just to give you perspective on just how high that is, I've circled the spots that was in blue where I took the two pictures, so you can see the comparison. But you can't see the comparison because it's pictures and you're listening to audio. So yeah, we made it to the top and back down with a significant amount of sliding down snow, as Katie is demonstrating in this lovely picture. And then once we made it back to the lake, we set back down the mountain. And now, I've got to say, this hike was too long for me. I got to the point where my body just really ached, and it wasn't even really worth my time, or worth it for me. By the time we got to the car, I was just feeling super done. I literally hiked for 11 hours and 30 minutes. Sure, we stopped and took breaks, but we were, on the trail basically the entire time, and I could definitely feel it. So yeah, Duncan then drove us home, and we avoided chai at Nepali's restaurant, which I was honestly grateful for. And then we made it home, and I just crashed. And finally, today, I woke up, I woke to a house with just me and Ben and Mom and Dad. Oh, I see. I woke up to a house with just me and Ben and Mom. Dad and Grace are going backpacking for the weekend. We'll see how that goes. And yeah, I've just been working on this email the whole day and helping Ben with his stop motion project some. He has this weird idea I'm not going to try and explain, and you can just see it if he succeeds. But it involves having fake arms that look like this. Woo! And that has caught you to the present, where it is late and night, and I am thinking, why do I write such stupidly long emails? So yeah, I hope this one has been more interesting than normal, and if you find time, I would always like to hear what's going on in your guys' life, because, most people are just radio silent, and for all I know, you're dead. But other than that, thanks for reading the latest live email, and I'll catch you all again soon.